The morning of May 7, 2021, dawned like any other for many across the U.S. East Coast. Yet, deep within the digital networks of Colonial Pipeline, a crisis was unfolding. This company, responsible for transporting nearly half of the East Coast's fuel supplies, was under siege. Its operations, which moved over 100 million gallons of gasoline, diesel, and jet fuel daily through a sprawling 5,500-mile network, ground to an alarming halt. This was not a mechanical failure or a natural disaster. It was a meticulously orchestrated cyberattack, a stark reminder of the vulnerabilities inherent in our increasingly interconnected critical infrastructure. The invisible lines of code that manage the flow of vital resources had been weaponized. The attackers, later identified as a group known as DarkSide, had infiltrated Colonial Pipeline systems. Their method was ransomware, a malicious software designed to encrypt files and render systems unusable. The goal was extortion. The attackers demanded a hefty sum in cryptocurrency to provide the decryption key that would unlock the paralyzed network. The shutdown was immediate and far-reaching. It sent shockwaves not just through the energy sector but across the entire nation, highlighting how dependent modern society is on these unseen digital backbones. The pipeline, a physical artery of commerce, was choked by a digital tourniquet, demonstrating a new era of industrial sabotage. The initial hours were likely a blur of frantic activity within Colonial Pipeline's control rooms. Technicians and cybersecurity experts scrambled to understand the extent of the breach. They faced a critical decision: isolate the affected systems to prevent further spread or risk deeper infiltration. The company chose to proactively shut down its entire pipeline operation. This decision, while necessary from a security standpoint, was the trigger for a cascade of consequences. The news of the shutdown spread rapidly, and with it, a sense of unease began to permeate the public consciousness. The lifeblood of the Eastern Seaboard's transportation and economy was suddenly constricted. This event was more than just a corporate inconvenience, it was a national security concern. The Colonial Pipeline is not merely a commercial entity, it is designated as critical infrastructure by the U.S. government. Its uninterrupted operation is vital for economic stability and national defense. The attack underscored a chilling reality. Sophisticated cyber adversaries possess the capability to disrupt essential services, potentially causing widespread chaos and economic damage. The digital ambush on Colonial Pipeline was a watershed moment, forcing a national reckoning with the pervasive and growing threat of cyber attacks against the very systems that underpin modern life. The silence of the usually humming pipeline was a loud alarm. The sophistication of the DarkSide ransomware was undeniable. Yet the initial means of entry into Colonial Pipeline's network was shockingly simple. It wasn't a complex multi-stage exploit leveraging zero-day vulnerabilities. Instead, the hackers gained their initial foothold through a single compromised password. This password was associated with a virtual private network, VPN account. The VPN account allowed employees to remotely access the company's computer network. Crucially, this particular VPN account reportedly did not have multi-factor authentication (MFA) enabled. MFA requires a user to provide 2 or more verification factors to gain access, adding a critical layer of security. The absence of MFA on such a sensitive access point proved to be a fatal flaw. It meant that once the attackers obtained the correct username and password combination, they could waltz right into the network. How they obtained that password remains a subject of some discussion. It could have been acquired through a phishing attack, purchased on the dark web from previous data breaches, or guessed through brute force methods if it was a weak password. Regardless of the exact method of acquisition, the outcome was the same: unauthorized access to Colonial Pipeline's internal systems. This single point of failure highlights a common, yet often overlooked, vulnerability in many organizations. Once inside, the attackers could navigate the network, escalate their privileges, and identify critical systems to target. The compromised VPN account was the digital key that unlocked the door. It provided them with a legitimate, albeit unauthorized, pathway. This underscores the critical importance of robust password policies, regular password audits, and the universal implementation of multi-factor authentication, especially for accounts that provide remote access to sensitive corporate networks. Such basic cyber hygiene practices are no longer optional. They are fundamental necessities in the face of increasingly brazen cyber adversaries who actively hunt for such low-hanging fruit. The Colonial Pipeline incident serves as a stark case study. It demonstrates that even organizations managing critical national infrastructure can be brought down by a relatively unsophisticated entry vector if fundamental security measures are neglected. The attackers didn't need to be digital masterminds for this initial breach, they simply needed to exploit a common human or procedural oversight. The ease with which this initial access was gained is perhaps one of the most unsettling aspects of the entire event. It suggests that many other critical systems could be similarly vulnerable, waiting for an attacker to find the one unlocked digital door or the one easily guessed key. The shutdown of the Colonial Pipeline triggered an immediate and rapidly escalating crisis across the U.S. East Coast. As news of the cyberattack and the pipeline's operational halt spread, public anxiety began to mount. Within days, what started as a trickle of concern turned into a flood of panic buying. Consumers, fearing prolonged shortages, rushed to gas stations, leading to long lines, frayed tempers, and, inevitably, widespread fuel outages. Stations that still had gasoline saw their supplies dwindle at an unprecedented rate. The sight of no gas signs became increasingly common, painting a grim picture of the disruption's tangible impact on daily life. The numbers were stark. At the peak of the crisis, over 16,000 gas stations reported running out of fuel. States like North Carolina, South Carolina, Virginia, Georgia, and Florida were particularly hard hit. The sudden scarcity drove gasoline prices to their highest levels in years. The average national price per gallon surged, adding financial strain to already anxious consumers. This price spike wasn't just a reflection of supply and demand, it was also fueled by the uncertainty and fear gripping the affected regions. The situation demonstrated the fragility of the just-in-time fuel delivery system and its susceptibility to sudden shocks, especially one as unexpected as a major cyber attack. Beyond the inconvenience for individual drivers, the fuel shortage had broader economic consequences. Delivery services reliant on gasoline and diesel faced operational challenges. Some airlines had to adjust flight schedules or add refueling stops due to jet fuel concerns at certain airports. The ripple effects extended into various sectors, illustrating how deeply intertwined the fuel supply is with the overall functioning of the economy. The panic itself exacerbated the problem, as hoarding behavior drained available supplies much faster than actual consumption rates would have dictated. This human element, the psychology of fear, played a significant role in amplifying the crisis. The federal government and state authorities scrambled to respond. Emergency declarations were issued to waive certain transportation regulations, allowing fuel to be transported by trucks and ships more flexibly. However, these measures could only partially mitigate the shortfall caused by the pipeline's incapacitation. The event laid bare the challenges of rapidly compensating for a disruption to such a critical piece of infrastructure. It served as a powerful illustration of how a cyber incident, originating in the digital realm, could manifest as a very real and very disruptive physical world crisis, impacting millions of ordinary people and the rhythm of their daily lives. Faced with an unprecedented operational shutdown and mounting public and political pressure, Colonial Pipeline made a difficult decision. On May 7, the same day the attack was discovered and operations ceased, the company paid the ransom demanded by the dark-side hackers. The amount paid was reportedly 75 Bitcoin, which at the time was valued at approximately $4.4 million. This decision was controversial. Law enforcement agencies, including the FBI, generally advise against paying ransoms, as it can encourage further attacks and fund criminal enterprises. However, the imperative to restore the fuel supply as quickly as possible weighed heavily on the company. Colonial Pipeline's CEO Joseph Blount later testified before Congress, stating that he authorized the payment because the company was unsure how badly its systems were breached or how long it would take to restore the pipeline. He described it as the right thing to do for the country. The attackers, true to their word in this instance, provided a decryption tool after receiving the payment. However, the tool proved to be so slow and inefficient that Colonial Pipeline ended up relying more on its own backups and internal efforts to restore its systems. This detail adds another layer to the complexity of ransom payments, suggesting that even when paid, a swift and complete recovery is not guaranteed. The aftermath of the payment was also notable. In a surprising turn of events, the U.S. Department of Justice announced in June 2021 that it had managed to recover a significant portion of the ransom. Investigators were able to trace the cryptocurrency payments and seize approximately 63.7 Bitcoin, then valued at $2.3 million, from a Bitcoin wallet used by the DarkSide group. This recovery was a significant victory for law enforcement and demonstrated that cryptocurrency transactions are not always untraceable. It sent a message to ransomware gangs that their ill-gotten gains might not be secure even in the perceived anonymity of the crypto world. Despite the partial recovery, the debate over ransom payments continues. The Colonial Pipeline incident highlighted the immense pressure faced by victims of ransomware, particularly when critical infrastructure is involved. The decision to pay is often a desperate gamble, balancing the immediate need for operational restoration against the long-term implications of fueling the ransomware economy. The incident spurred renewed discussions among policymakers and industry leaders about the best strategies to combat ransomware, including improving defenses, enhancing information sharing, and disrupting the financial networks that enable these criminal enterprises to thrive. The ransom was paid, but the problem was far from solved. Section 5. A Rising Tide, the Escalating Cyber Threat. The Colonial Pipeline attack was not an isolated incident. It was a prominent example of a much broader and deeply concerning trend: the increasing frequency and severity of cyberattacks targeting critical U.S. infrastructure. Data and reports from various cybersecurity firms and government agencies paint a grim picture. Ransomware, in particular, has become a dominant threat vector. In 2023 alone, ransomware attacks accounted for over 72% of all cyber intrusions, severely impacting sectors ranging from healthcare and education to energy and manufacturing. These attacks are no longer niche concerns, they are mainstream threats with potentially devastating consequences. The sheer volume of cybercrime is staggering. The FBI's Internet Crime Complaint Center, or IC3, registered over 880,418 complaints in 2024, with reported potential losses exceeding a colossal $12.5 billion. This figure represents only the reported incidents, meaning the true economic impact is likely much higher. Globally, financial losses attributed to cybercrime surpassed an astonishing $8 trillion in 2023. These numbers underscore the scale of the challenge. Cyber adversaries, ranging from sophisticated state-sponsored groups to financially motivated criminal gangs like DarkSide, are becoming more audacious, more skilled, and better resourced. The digital landscape has become a battlefield. The energy sector, as demonstrated by the Colonial Pipeline incident and other attacks like the one on Halliburton in August 2024, remains a prime target. Its disruption can have immediate and widespread societal impacts. However, the threat extends far beyond energy. Water treatment plants, transportation systems, healthcare facilities, and financial institutions are all in the crosshairs. A Russian-linked global cyber attack in June 2023, for example, targeted U.S. federal agencies, including the Department of Energy, further highlighting the persistent interest of nation-state actors in probing and potentially disrupting American critical functions. The motives vary from espionage and intellectual property theft to extortion and outright sabotage. This escalating threat environment demands a paradigm shift in how organizations and governments approach cybersecurity. It's no longer sufficient to view cybersecurity as merely an IT department concern. It is a fundamental aspect of operational resilience, national security, and public safety. The increasing sophistication of attackers, coupled with the expanding attack surface created by greater connectivity and reliance on digital systems, including the Internet of Things, means that defenses must be constantly evolving. The rising tide of cyber attacks shows no signs of receding. Instead, it appears to be gathering strength, posing an ever greater challenge to the stability and security of modern society. Section 6. Cracks in the Foundation, Vulnerable Infrastructure. The Colonial Pipeline incident cast a harsh spotlight on the vulnerabilities lurking within U.S. critical infrastructure. The energy sector, while a frequent target, is not alone in its susceptibility. Water systems, for instance, represent another area of significant concern. Many water utilities, particularly smaller municipal ones, often lack the resources and cybersecurity expertise of larger corporations. The Environmental Protection Agency itself highlighted this vulnerability, noting that a staggering 70% of U.S. water companies inspected were found to be susceptible to cyber attacks. An attack on a water system could have catastrophic consequences, ranging from service disruption to the contamination of water supplies. Healthcare is another sector teetering on a precarious digital edge. Hospitals and healthcare providers increasingly rely on interconnected medical devices, electronic health records, and networked administrative systems. While these technologies offer significant benefits, they also expand the potential attack surface. Ransomware attacks on hospitals have become tragically common, leading to canceled appointments, diverted ambulances, and in some horrifying cases, compromised patient care. The sensitive nature of patient data also makes healthcare organizations prime targets for data theft. The disruption of healthcare services through cyber means is a direct threat to human life and well-being. The vulnerabilities often stem from a combination of factors. Legacy industrial control systems and supervisory control and data acquisition systems, which manage physical processes in many critical infrastructure sectors, were often designed before cybersecurity was a major consideration. These systems can be difficult to patch or update without causing operational disruptions. Furthermore, the increasing convergence of information technology networks with operational technology networks creates new pathways for attackers to cross from corporate systems into the sensitive control environments. A lack of adequate investment in cybersecurity, insufficient skilled personnel, and a fragmented regulatory landscape can further exacerbate these weaknesses. The interconnectedness of modern infrastructure also means that a vulnerability in one area can have cascading effects on others. For example, a disruption to the energy grid could impact water treatment plants, communication networks, and transportation systems. This interdependence creates complex risk profiles that are challenging to manage. The Colonial Pipeline hack was a clear demonstration that a single point of failure, such as an unpatched VPN or a weak password, can have far-reaching consequences across a vital sector. Identifying and addressing these cracks in the foundation of our critical infrastructure is an urgent national priority. Section 7. Expert alarms, warnings from the cybersecurity frontlines. Cybersecurity experts have been sounding the alarm about the vulnerability of critical infrastructure for years, long before the Colonial Pipeline attack brought the issue into sharp public focus. These warnings often highlighted the gap between the escalating capabilities of cyber adversaries and the often lagging defensive postures of many critical infrastructure operators. Courtney Adante from Teneo, a global CEO advisory firm, is one such voice, explicitly warning about the very real threat to essential services like water systems, dams, and energy grids. Her perspective underscores that these are not theoretical risks, but tangible dangers with the potential for severe real-world impact, capable of disrupting daily life on a massive scale. Experts point to a confluence of factors contributing to this heightened vulnerability. One is the increasing sophistication and boldness of attackers, including state-sponsored groups and well-organized cybercriminal syndicates. These actors are often well-funded and highly motivated, constantly probing for weaknesses. Another factor is the ongoing digital transformation across all sectors, including critical infrastructure. While modernization brings efficiencies, it also expands the attack surface by connecting previously isolated operational technology systems to the internet or corporate IT networks. This convergence, if not managed securely, creates new avenues for attackers to exploit, as seen in numerous incidents. Furthermore, there's often a persistent challenge related to resources and awareness. Many critical infrastructure entities, especially smaller municipalities or private companies, may lack dedicated cybersecurity teams or the budget for advanced security solutions. There can also be a cultural disconnect, where the focus has traditionally been on physical security and operational reliability, with cybersecurity sometimes treated as a secondary concern. Experts argue for a fundamental shift in mindset, where cybersecurity is integrated into the core operational strategy of every critical infrastructure organization, recognized as being just as vital as physical safety and engineering integrity. The consensus among many cybersecurity professionals is that while perfect security is unattainable, significant improvements can and must be made. This involves a multi-layered approach encompassing robust technical defenses, continuous monitoring, regular security assessments and penetration testing, comprehensive employee training, and well-rehearsed incident response plans. Experts also emphasize the importance of public-private partnerships and information sharing to build collective resilience against shared threats. The warnings from the front lines are clear. Proactive investment and a sustained commitment to cybersecurity are essential to protect the services upon which society depends. Ignoring these alarms is a gamble with unacceptably high stakes. Section 8, Wake-up Call, Governmental Scrutiny, and Industry Response. The Colonial Pipeline attack served as a potent wake-up call, galvanizing both governmental bodies and industry leaders to reevaluate the state of cybersecurity in critical infrastructure. In the immediate aftermath, President Biden issued an executive order aimed at improving the nation's cybersecurity, including measures to enhance information sharing between the government and the private sector, modernize federal government cybersecurity, and establish baseline security standards for software sold to the government. This executive action signaled a new level of federal commitment to addressing systemic cyber risks, acknowledging that the threat landscape required a more robust and coordinated national response. Congress also intensified its scrutiny. Lawmakers from both parties convened hearings, summoning executives from Colonial Pipeline and cybersecurity experts to testify. Leaders of key committees, such as the House Energy and Commerce Committee, stressed the paramount importance of network integrity, not just for pipeline operators, but also for telecommunications companies and other vital service providers. These hearings explored the specifics of the Colonial attack, the decision to pay the ransom, and the broader vulnerabilities plaguing U.S. infrastructure. The legislative branch began to explore potential new laws and regulations to mandate minimum cybersecurity standards for critical sectors, a move that had previously faced significant industry resistance. Within the private sector, the incident spurred many organizations, particularly in the energy industry, to conduct urgent reviews of their own cybersecurity postures. Companies re-examined their remote access policies, the implementation of multi-factor authentication, their incident response plans, and their investments in cybersecurity technologies and personnel. Industry associations ramped up efforts to share threat intelligence and best practices. There was a palpable sense that the Colonial Pipeline attack had crossed a threshold, making the potential for catastrophic disruption undeniable. The cost of inaction, both reputationally and financially, was suddenly much clearer to boards and executive teams across various critical industries. However, the response has not been without its challenges. Debates continue over the appropriate balance between government regulation and industry self-regulation. Some argue that prescriptive mandates are necessary to ensure a baseline level of security across all critical entities, while others advocate for more flexible, risk-based approaches. The shortage of skilled cybersecurity professionals remains a significant hurdle for many organizations. Despite these ongoing discussions and challenges, the Colonial Pipeline attack undeniably accelerated the conversation and spurred concrete actions aimed at hardening the defenses of the nation's most vital systems, moving cybersecurity from a technical concern to a strategic imperative. Section 9. Bolstering defenses, strategies to avert future catastrophes. Preventing future cyber attacks on the scale of the Colonial Pipeline incident requires a comprehensive and multifaceted strategy. There is no single silver bullet, but rather a combination of technical, procedural, and policy measures that must be implemented and continuously adapted. A foundational step for all critical infrastructure operators is the rigorous implementation of cybersecurity best practices. This includes basics like strong password policies, patching known vulnerabilities promptly, and, crucially, mandating multi-factor authentication for all remote access and privileged accounts. The Colonial breach itself underscored how a failure in this fundamental area can have devastating consequences. Beyond these basics, organizations must invest in advanced threat detection and response capabilities. This means deploying modern security tools that can identify anomalous activity, monitor network traffic for signs of intrusion, and enable rapid containment and eradication of threats. Regular penetration testing and vulnerability assessments, conducted by independent third parties, are essential to proactively identify and remediate weaknesses before attackers can exploit them. Developing and regularly testing comprehensive incident response plans is also critical, ensuring that organizations can react swiftly and effectively when an attack does occur, minimizing damage and downtime. This preparedness can be the difference between a manageable incident and a full-blown crisis. Public-private partnerships and enhanced information sharing are vital components of a national cybersecurity strategy. Government agencies like CISA play a crucial role in providing threat intelligence, guidance, and support to private sector entities. Conversely, private companies must be willing to share information about threats and incidents they encounter, as this collective intelligence helps build a clearer picture of the threat landscape and enables more effective defenses for everyone. Fostering a culture of security awareness across all levels of an organization, from the boardroom to the front lines, is also indispensable, as employees are often the first line of defense against attacks like phishing. Finally, there is a need for a clear and consistent regulatory framework that establishes minimum cybersecurity standards for critical infrastructure sectors, without being overly prescriptive or stifling innovation. Such regulations should be risk-based and adaptable to the evolving threat landscape. Furthermore, investing in the cybersecurity workforce through education and training programs is essential to address the persistent skills gap. By taking these concerted steps, strengthening individual defenses, fostering collaboration, promoting a security-conscious culture, and establishing sensible oversight, the nation can significantly reduce its vulnerability to the kinds of cyber attacks that crippled the Colonial Pipeline and threatened the economic well-being of millions.